Hello, and welcome back to Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby, where we will continue good stories for great holidays. Clytie, the Heliotrope, by Ovid, adapted. There was once a nymph named Clytie, who gazed over at Apollo as he drove his sun chariot through the heavens. She watched him as he rose in the east, ascended by the rosy-fingered dawn and the dancing hours. She gazed as he ascended the heavens, urging his steed still higher in the fierce heat of the noonday. She looked with wonder as at evening he guided his steeds downwards to their many-colored pastures under the western sky, where they fed all night on ambrosia. Apollo saw not Clytie. He had no thought of her, but he shed his brightest beams upon her sister, the white nymph Leucotho. And when Clytie perceived this, she was filled with envy and grief. Night and day she sat on the bare ground weeping. For 9 days and 9 nights she never raised herself from the earth, nor did she take food or drink. But ever she turned her weeping eyes towards the sun god as he moved through the sky. And her limbs became rooted to the ground. Green leaves enfolded her body. Her beautiful face was concealed by tiny flowers, violet-colored and sweet with perfume. Thus was she changed into a flower, and her roots held her fast to the ground. But ever she turned her blossom-covered face towards the sun, following with eager gaze his daily flight. In vain were her sorrow and tears, for Apollo regarded her not. And so, through the ages has the nymph turned her dew-washed face towards the heavens, and men no longer call her Clytie, but the sunflower Heliotrope. Hyacinthus, by Ovid, adapted. Once when the golden-beamed Apollo roamed the earth, he made a companion of Hyacinthus, the son of King Amyclus of Lacedaemon, and him he loved with an exceeding great love, for the lad was beautiful beyond compare. The sun god threw aside his lair, and became the daily comrade of Hyacinthus. Often they played games, or climbed the rugged mountain ridges. Together they followed the chase, or fished in the quiet and shadowy pools. And the sun god, unmindful of his dignity, carried the lad's nets and held his dogs. It happened on the day that the two friends stripped off their garments, rubbed the juice of the olive upon their bodies, and engaged in throwing the quoit. First, Apollo poised it and tossed it far. It cleaved the air with its weight and fell heavily to earth. At that moment, Hyacinthus ran towards and hastened to pick up the disc, but the hard earth sent it rebounding straight to his face, so that he fell wounded to the ground. Then, pale and fearful, the sun god hastened to the side of his fallen friend. He bore up the lad's sinking limbs and strove to stanch his wounds with healing herbs. All in vain, alas! The wound would not close, and as violets and lilies, when their stems are crushed, hang their languid blossoms on their stalks and wither away, so did Hyacinthus droop his beautiful head and die. Then the sun god, full of grief, cried aloud in his anguish, "O beloved, thou fallest in thy early youth, and I alone am the cause of thy destruction. Oh, that I could give my life for thee, or with thee! But since fate will not permit this, thou shalt ever be with me, and thy praise shall dwell on my lips. My lyre struck my hand, my songs too shall celebrate thee, and thou, dear lad, shalt become a new flower, and on thy leaves will I write my lamentations." And even as the sun god spoke, behold, the blood that had flown from Hyacinthus's wound stained the grass, and the flower, like a lily in shape, sprang up, more bright than Tyrian purple. On its leaves did Apollo inscribe the mournful characters I, which means alas, alas. And as oft as the spring drives away the winter, so oft does Hyacinthus blossom in the fresh green grass. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby. I hope you'll have a good night and sweet dreams.